Okay, today I'm reviewing The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. This is a book that was chosen by my friends for a book club, but I did like it. It is about two French sisters. It's historical fiction. So two fictitious French sisters during World War II, both contributing in their own ways to the war effort. One of the sisters takes on a secret identity and helps downed airmen get out of German-occupied France so that they can get back in the war. And the other sister is at home with her daughter while her husband is a prisoner of war, and she ends up having her house occupied by Nazis, and she is making her own efforts to save Jewish children and her Jewish friend while having Nazis in her home. So that is a little bit of what the book is about. It is soon to be made into a major motion picture, so I'll be excited to see the movie when the movie comes out. Here's a note that I wanted to read from the author. At the end of the book, she says, "Several years ago, when I was researching Winter Garden, my novel about the something in World War II, I came across the story of a young Belgian woman named something that I cannot pronounce, who had created an escape route for downed airmen out of Nazi-occupied France. Her story, one of heroism and danger and unbridled courage, mesmerized me and led me to other stories about women of the French resistance, women who had saved Jewish children and rescued downed airmen and put themselves in harm's way to save others, women who had paid terrible, unimaginable prices for their heroism. The more I read, the more outraged I became, because these stories and these amazing women had been largely overlooked by history. There were literally dozens of heroic women whose lives inspired the characters in The Nightingale. It became profoundly important to me to tell their stories, to remember." It did feel a little bit strange reading this book. So I've read a lot of books about World War II that are not fiction, and it sounds like this author has also. And I've only ever read one other historical fiction book before. I read 19 Steps by Millie Bobby Brown, which was about, it's a fictional story, but it's based off of her grandmother's experience in World War II that her grandmother used to tell her about. So it felt like it had a tether to something true. And I guess this book does also, but the odd thing was, as I was reading it, knowing that the story was pretend, sort of made me feel like I would rather hear the stories of the real women. Like, she said that there was dozens of women whose stories were forgotten. And I guess this book highlights their stories in a very abstract way, but don't those women deserve to be remembered for who they actually are, like with their identities out front rather than behind a fictionalized character? It just felt a little bit weird to me, but I also get it, like, I don't know. It's hard to describe. On the one hand, I get it. I read this book. A lot of people have read this book. A lot of stories that are based on war are inspired by people. But it just felt weird to think that the people who inspired it are not really acknowledged. Like, that's in an author's note at the very end of the book. If you listen to the audiobook, you won't even hear it. And she named one person when she said that there was dozens. And I feel like I just feel like maybe they deserve to have their face at the forefront, the real people. Meanwhile, we're reading a pretend book about something that actually did happen for a lot of people. Does that make sense? That element of it felt odd to me. And it's not like, I've seen a lot of movies and it didn't feel the same way. Like, I watched Titanic. That's obviously based off of a true event, but with a fictionalized characters. And on one hand, I do feel like that's a way of bringing the story to people so that it doesn't get forgotten. And maybe the reason why I felt differently about this book is just because I've read so many books that are first-hand accounts, and I've watched a lot of shows that are based on first-hand accounts of World War II. It almost felt like if somebody read Anne Frank's diary and then was like, I'm gonna come up with my own story about a Jewish girl trapped in a house, but it's not gonna be Anne Frank. It's gonna be this pretend character. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm glad I know who Anne Frank is specifically, or who Viktor Frankl is specifically, rather than a pretend character that is able to have like a more entertaining plotline, you know? So that felt weird. One thing, the story was well written though, I must say. One thing I appreciated was that you do see diversity of thoughts amongst the Nazis in this book. So you have some Nazis who are kind of like your typical idea of like pure evil type of a thing, but she also has a Nazi living with her for a while at one point in the book where he doesn't agree with everything that's going on, and he does try in his own small ways that he can to try and help Jewish people and things like that. So it's interesting to see that contrast that you don't normally see. And there was a part towards the end, this is I guess a spoiler, click off if you don't want a spoiler, but she ends up having her Jewish best friend's son in her care, and she takes care of him for years, and then his parents both die in the Holocaust, and then he's taken away from her after the war to go live with his aunt. And this guy says to her, because she's explaining to the guy, like, I've been taking care of him this whole time, like, he views me as his mother, my daughter his sister, like, he already lost his real mother, he shouldn't have to lose his family again. And the guy says to her, yeah, I see what you're saying from his perspective, because you're just thinking about him, but from our perspective, we lost too many Jews. He needs to be raised in a Jewish household so that we can keep the Jewish tradition going on. So it's you need to give this child up, not for his sake, but for Judaism's sake. And that also seemed kind of strange to me. Like, that was hard. That was a hard part of the story. Because on the one hand, you can understand where he's coming from. On the other hand, this individual has been traumatized in such a severe way. Oh, a butterfly just... Okay. You probably didn't see it, but a really pretty monarch butterfly just flew by. It felt wrong for him to be taken away, and he's just taken away immediately. No time to mentally process it. He's still young. I would imagine he's maybe 5 years old when he's taken away from her. And that felt messy too. There's a lot of tear-jerking moments in the book, that's for sure. But yeah, it was well written. If you like historical fiction, then I would definitely recommend it. If you have an interest in World War II, then I would recommend a book that is just historical nonfiction. I think there's a separation between the emotions that fiction asks you to buy into when it's true fiction, something like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. You're in a total fictionalized world and you're with these characters on their journey and you can kind of emotionally go there with them. And if it's nonfiction, then it really did happen, and so emotionally it feels easy to go there with the, protagonist. But with the historical elements of it, where they're talking about things that really did happen, like the Holocaust, but then they're pretending that it happened to somebody, it felt strange to pretend that somebody was in a concentration camp when, as the author pointed out, there are people whose stories are accessible and underheard, I was at a friend of mine's house recently and she had a book on her shelf. I think it was called The D-Day Girls or something like that. And that book is about women who did a similar thing in real life. So I would be interested in reading that book, and maybe you should check out that book. I think it was called The D-Day Girls, something like that. But they genuinely did, actually, the types of things that are discussed in this book, I think. So, yeah, watch the movie when it comes out. And if you have read it, let me know. How do you feel about historical fiction? Do you like it? It does keep the topic alive, I suppose. And that is something. Anyways, hope you guys are having a good day. Bye-bye.